is made possible in part by grants from the New Mexico Municipal League, a better New Mexico through better cities, and from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. Our guest today is Michael S. Vigil. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lorene. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you have led such an extraordinary life, and you've had such a long career. Tell me about your background a little bit, but you're the former DEA chief of what?
International operations.
Oh my gosh, and a 31-year veteran with the DEA. You have received so many awards, but the one that is kind of dazzling is the Top Cop Award, which is the most prestigious award in law enforcement. It's given out by the National Association of Police Organizations. There's a whole lot of candidates, and they only give 10 a year. And so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
On that. Tell us a little about your background and where you're from.
I was born and raised in Espanola, New Mexico. I attended New Mexico State University, and I joined the Drug Enforcement Administration at a very early age of 22. And I was immediately put into an undercover role to penetrate a lot of the major drug trafficking organizations in the United States and then also in Mexico and South America. I sat very close to Pablo Escobar at soccer games, maybe about 4 feet. And then in Mexico, pursued a lot of the major drug lords that operated in that country at the time.
So you went to New Mexico State, but what drew you to law enforcement? What drew you to the DEA ultimately?
As a small child, I used to watch old movies like Dragnet, The Untouchables with Robert Stack. And that really piqued my interest in terms of pursuing, a career in law enforcement. And I never strayed off that path. I was very focused. And New Mexico State at that time had the only 4-year degree, along with maybe a handful of other universities. But I was very fortunate to be able to attend school there. And I owe a lot of credit to that university, for my accolades and everything that I received in my career with the DEA.
Well, you've gotten a lot of awards, but you've also gotten some very interesting things. Tell me a little about your relationship to Afghanistan and the city of Shanghai, and some of the gifts, some of the awards that are more than just a plaque on the wall. What other honors and awards have you been given?
Thank you. I was very fortunate in that the country of China actually gave me the proverbial key to the city of Shanghai. The Afghan government actually made me an honorary general. I'm the only one that they've ever given that honor to. And then the president of the Dominican Republic, Hipólito Mejia, gave me an admiral's sword. The country of Colombia gave me an officer's sword. So I've received a lot of awards, but I think the one that I really covet the most is a corrido, or a ballad sung by, Ángel Cuervo. And it's a beautiful song, and I hate to say this, but he just recently passed away in Mexico City. So I was very disheartened to hear about that, because he was a great composer and a great singer.
Well, tell us his name again. So a narco corrido are songs that were usually glorifying the bad guys, the narcotics kingpins and everything. But he wrote a song and recorded it for you. So tell me, let's honor him for a minute.
Yes, he is a really great singer, very famous singer worldwide. As a matter of fact, in Madrid, Spain, he went to sing and perform at Bellas Artes, a very historical theater, and he's the only singer to have ever received about a 4-minute standing ovation. So he has a lot of credits. He is very renowned in Mexico, and he was about my age when he passed away here recently of cancer. So, you know, I really want to recognize him as a very decent person, a person that did a lot for the entertainment industry in Mexico.
Well, he also realized that you have had an epic career and a lifetime of really intriguing things. I want to go into these a little bit because, among other things, you are an author. And this is your memoir called Deal, but you've got the words DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. And this is your memoir. Tell us a little about it.
It's my memoir. I basically trace my background to, being born and raised in Española. It tracks my education at New Mexico State. And then it talks about my career as I moved from post of duty to post of duty within the agency. And it's a very fascinating life. I would not have traded it for the world. Very dangerous, but I thrived in that danger. And the more dangerous the situations became, Lorene, the more deadly calm I became.
Wow. Just let me show a couple of other books. So this is The Rise of the Sicario. What does Sicario mean?
Sicario means hitman.
We don't want them rising around here. Another beautiful book, The Claw of the Dragon. So these are kind of narco fiction, but if anyone wants to know what this world is like, they should read your book. Show us your latest.
The latest is Drug Capo. This is my 8th book. And you're right, most of the genre that I focus in on is terrorism and then also drug trafficking. A lot of the authors that I know, they do a lot of research. They do outlines. I don't do that because I have a ton of personal experiences. So I just, type the books out of my computer, and I develop the storyline as I go along.
Now, you write about many cartels in your books, but are they real? Is there a Land of Enchantment cartel? Is there a Narco Queen cartel? Is there...
Some of those I make them up, but at the same time I do talk about some of the existing cartels, but normally I like to, make up the names. New Mexico is called the Land of Enchantment, obviously. So I named it Land of Enchantment Cartel because it's a cartel based in New Mexico.
Right. So I've always wanted to ask you this. Going undercover is, you can't slip up. If you're using an assumed name and you don't answer to it, because that's not your name and you just space it out a minute, you cannot have a chink in your armor. You have to be on all the time. So how, and you're working in highly stressful situations where there are guns and drugs involved, and people of questionable morality, perhaps not. How do you stay on like that when you're working undercover?
Well, I was a very good actor. I should have won a couple of Academy Awards, but I maintained my composure. And I've always had what I would consider a photographic memory. So I would develop my persona, if you will, as a drug trafficker. And it was a little bit taxing when you have to spend a lot of time with them because they're always testing you. You have to understand that drug traffickers are a very paranoid lot. So they ask you questions, they test you, and if you make one mistake, that could cost you your life. So it is stressful, but like I said, I'm very calm when I'm negotiating with these drug traffickers, and I think more often than not, they're more intimidated of me than I am of them.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's like paranoia on paranoia. The very drugs themselves. Now, most I don't know whether it's true or not, that the dealers at the highest level do not particularly participate of the drugs that they're dealing, but some of the drugs that are being dealt are just a main line to paranoia. So you can't be in a paranoid state and conducting this kind of interaction.
Well, you're right. The major drug traffickers, they don't want to deal with drug addicts simply because they're a liability.
Yeah.
And if they get caught and they start going through withdrawals, they're going to start talking. So I always, portrayed myself as being interested in profit. I never portrayed a drug addict or whatever because they won't deal with you.
Yeah.
Not at that level.
Right. What do you need? What kind of person do you need to be to do undercover work, successful undercover? Well, you've got the photographic memory, that helps. You're also unflappable and have a lot of natural gravitas. You're very centered. You have a very strong presence. But what else might someone need to do if they're going, and a good actor, as you say?
Well, what they're going to need to know is the prices of the drugs. For example, if you're negotiating with a drug trafficker and he throws out something that is outrageous and you go along with it, he knows that you're not a drug trafficker. You also have to make sure that you understand the persona that you laid out, the story, because if you make a mistake with that story, and like I said, they're going to be testing you, you can't afford to make a mistake, and you have to anticipate the moves of these drug traffickers. A lot of times I'd be working undercover, I didn't have the money to show them to buy the drugs, so I would take hundreds of $1 bills and then put a $100 bill on each side, then tape them to my ankles so they couldn't flip through the bills, and I was able to get them to deliver the drugs just by lifting up my pant leg. So you do these things, and you also play under greed. I was working in Sao Paulo, Brazil, with Bolivians actually. And they wanted to see the money. Well, I didn't have the millions of dollars to show them. So I told them, I said, listen, after about a week, I said, you don't want to sell to me. I'm going to go find somebody else. And the guy that I was meeting with actually lied to his people and said that he had seen the money. And they delivered at a clandestine airstrip near Sao Paulo.
Well, we're speaking today with Michael S. Vigil about his his life. This is his memoir called Deal, but his life and times as an undercover DEA agent. And these stories are intriguing. Was there a time when you thought you were toast?
I did. There was one time in Caborca, Sonora, Mexico. I was working undercover on major drug traffickers there. I met them at a gasoline station restaurant, and the Mexican Federal Judicial Police that were conducting surveillance, they didn't have patience. And I'm sitting at the restaurant and they're, giving me this sign like, what's going on? And this guy's threatening me, telling me if I'm a federal agent, he's going to kill me.
Jeez.
So, I'm just playing it cool. So the bad guy says he has to go to the restroom, which is an outdoor restroom. So I figured I better follow him outside.
So he wouldn't vanish.
And sure enough, one of the Mexican Federal Judicial Police puts his gun on his chest, and he grabs the barrel. So now he's got leverage, and he turns it. The gun goes off and hits the federal police officer in the head, and a spray of red blood just goes up in the air. He takes the gun and he fires 2 shots at me from a distance of 1 meter, and I could feel the bullets pass by my left ear, and shots were returned, and he fell. and later died.
And fight or flight kicks in immediately, but you couldn't have either fought or gotten away fast enough to get yourself out of that. Luckily, the man was killed by your allies on the outside, but that's still, that took 10 years off of you, I'm sure.
Well, it's always, you know, the adrenaline is always flowing. And as an undercover agent, Lorene, you have to learn how to curb that adrenaline flow, because you get addicted to it and you start taking more chances. And that becomes a very risky situation for any undercover agent. So you have to be really careful with it.
Because I'd hate to have that thought cross your mind that you've made a fatal mistake and you're just waiting for things to take their course.
Correct.
But I want to talk about a fatal mistake in this state that a lot of people are making, because we're in the middle of a very dangerous fentanyl epidemic. And it's gone so far that people are mailing fentanyl-laced envelopes, and you can absorb it through your skin, to election officials in Georgia, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, a lot of places. And also, they're now making heart-shaped fentanyl tablets to appeal to teenagers as a kind of branding. So this, Albuquerque just had a huge fentanyl awareness meeting, and they had people whose lives have been changed or whose loved ones have been lost, and everyone is trying to warn people about the dangers of fentanyl, because it is no longer, tell me some of the statistics. What's the death rate in America?
For the last several years, we're losing about 70,000 people in the United States to fentanyl overdose deaths. But getting back to your point, fentanyl cannot be absorbed through the skin.
Oh.
But the letters that you talk about that have been mailed to election officials, if they ingest it or breathe.
Oh, so they could tear open the
tear
envelope,
it open,
the
and
powder
they
would be
breathe
released.
in, because 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be fatal to an adult.
And that's a few grains of salt.
That would be the equivalent of about 3 grains of salt. And it's highly, highly dangerous. And people that take fentanyl, for example, they have a better chance of survival if they're playing Russian roulette.
Those are not good odds. I hear now that it's being combined with something called xylazine, an animal tranquilizer.
That's correct. Xylazine is an animal tranquilizer, like you said, and it's being mixed with fentanyl, which makes it even more dangerous. They call it tranq, or they call it the zombie drug, because it causes necrosis of the skin and it can lead to amputations. Now, this xylazine fentanyl mixture has been found in 48 of the 50 states.
Well, that's ghastly enough. Even the name zombie drug does not make it particularly attractive. But because those two drugs are combined, it renders Narcan, the life-giving overdose-saving drug, it doesn't work on that combination. So someone who has tranq, and of course the first responders, if somebody's passed out, they don't know what they took, they're going to try Narcan. Narcan will not work if they've had the fentanyl laced with tranq.
That's correct. Narcan only reverses opioid overdoses, but it's not going to work on xylazine and other things such as methamphetamine, cocaine, or whatever, only on synthetic or actual natural opioids.
Well, so I've heard there are test strips available, and I don't know who started doing that, but it's very important that either a user or a seller or law enforcement needs to know what they're dealing with.
That's correct, because the cartels in Mexico, Lorene, are mixing fentanyl with other drugs, for example, methamphetamine, marijuana, heroin, cocaine. So the users here in the United States don't know that they're actually ingesting fentanyl. So it's very important that they have these test strips to make sure that the drugs that they're about to consume don't have fentanyl. And that is one of the main reasons that we're suffering so many deaths here in the United States, because the addicts don't know that they're actually taking fentanyl.
So most state and federal health departments try to do something called harm reduction. And with injectables, they would make it so that you could get a clean hypodermic kit, or set, needle and syringe. You could just hand in your old ones. They would give you clean ones because of the danger of diseases and the fatalities from shared needle use. So who is making these test strips available? Are they readily available? Because I think everyone should have them.
Well, the Biden administration is making those readily available, through a lot of the state institutions, health institutions throughout the country. And I would recommend that people who are using drugs, that they have these test strips. I would recommend that first responders, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, even family members of people that have drug addicts in the family, that they have Narcan. So that is something that would prevent a lot of the deaths from occurring here in this country.
Well, I'm just, there's so much else to talk about, but I thought we really had to broach the fentanyl issue to make people aware, and also teachers, religious leaders, parents, other teenagers. There needs to be a much, Albuquerque tried with their fentanyl awareness, but there needs to be a much broader education about what this is. So I don't have much time left, so tell me what we need to know that I haven't mentioned.
Well, I think you covered a lot of it, but I think that we need more treatment facilities in New Mexico. We need to basically distribute these test strips, Narcan. I would recommend that we incorporate into the school's curriculum drug education, because demand reduction, to me, is the key to solving this problem. And we need to do a better job in that regard, because in the schools, we get a healthcare professional, we get a police officer that will talk to the kids, maybe once a year. Well, that's not going to cut it. We need to do a lot better job in that regard.
One of the most effective treatment presentations has been particularly with the anti-methadone campaigns, because they will have just a very strung out person, no teeth left and everything, and she'll hold a picture of what she was last year. And she was a beautiful young woman, and now there's not much left. I mean, she's really damaged herself. And so for people to realize, if I'm going down this path, this is where it ends up.
Well, the thing is that illegal drugs only lead to death and destruction, and it's very unfortunate, but I think we need to do a better job when our children are very small and educate them, because a lot of times, the parents are busy, both of them work, they get home tired. So, what will it take for legislators to, really, create funding, for teachers that will handle that in the schools. And it's not only here in New Mexico, but throughout the entire country.
And we only have a couple of minutes left, but you talked about harm prevention. How are most of these drugs coming into the country? And they think that perhaps one illegal immigrant has a backpack full of, but no, tell us how it really is getting here.
Well, you have a lot of people that blame, migrants, as bringing the drugs in. That's not true. Yes, maybe there's a backpacker here or there, but that would never satisfy all of the demand that we have here in the United States. So most of it is coming in through the legitimate ports of entry. I would say 80 to 85%. And then we also have drug tunnels throughout the 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border. They can fly it in. And then keep in mind that we have common border with Mexico on the Pacific side, and then also on the Gulf of Mexico, so they can use boats to bring it in. In the past, we were only able to search about 17% of the trucks coming into the United States and about 3% of passenger vehicles. By 2026, they're going to have enough scanners to at least be able to search 70% of the trucks.
Well, that's a huge improvement.
It's a huge improvement. It's not perfect, but it is much better than what we've seen in the past.
Well, there's just so much to do. I'm so grateful. Our guest today is Michael S. Vigil. I want to recommend many of his books. This one is his memoir, Deal, about if you want to know how dangerous going undercover and also working with these commodities and the people that profit from them. So give us one last statement, if you would, for our education and our benefit. What's the most important thing we need to know?
I think that we need to know that drugs are highly dangerous. Fentanyl is probably the most dangerous drug that we've ever faced here in the United States. I think that we have to work together as a community in order to try to diminish the impact that this drug is having, because it truly is a clear and present danger, and it's a national security threat.
Well, I think it's so important for us to get your message out and for us to educate everyone in our communities, because we're losing so many people that we don't have to lose, and education is the answer.
Well, I want to congratulate you, Lorene, because your programs dealing with public awareness undoubtedly saved lives, and you're a treasure to New Mexico.
Well, thank you. It takes one to know one, Mr. Vigil. So our guest today is Mike S. Vigil. I want you to look at these books. The Rise of the Sicario. Deal is a really good one, and the new one, Drug Capo.
The Drug Capo.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lorene. It's a pleasure seeing you, and keep up the good work.
Yes, I know. And I'm Lorene Mills. I'd like to thank you, our audience, for being with us today on Report from Santa Fe. We'll see you next week.
Past archival programs of Report from Santa Fe are available at the website reportfromsantafe.com. If you have questions or comments, please email info@reportfromsantafe.com. Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the New Mexico Municipal League, a better New Mexico through better cities, and from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.